Hello and welcome to another episode of North 100, a Canadian Highlander podcast. I'm Serge. Joining me as always, I've got Jer, Alex, and Liam. Reminder that North 100 is brought to you by you with your support at the Patreon over at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. So today we've got something a little bit different. This is going to be a recap for the Highlander by Proxy event we had last Friday. So we're going to go cut to a bunch of one-on-one interviews with the North 100 host and their battler by Proxy. So check it out.
All right, hi, and welcome to the Friday Night Paper Fight North 100 Highlander by Proxy recap show. Yes, that title is long. I understand. I'm Liam, and I'm here with Paul, who was my champion. We're just going to talk about the deck. So the deck that I brought was 5-color charms, sort of a 5-color control deck. And part of the reason I brought it is I'm pretty known for playing decks with a lot of colors in them that are sort of like difficult to execute. And I thought it'd be fun to watch someone else try and pilot that deck. So that's largely why I brought it. The other reason was we felt it had okay matchups against the other decks that people were bringing, and we did talk about ahead of time what everyone was bringing, just in order to make sure that the games weren't.
You wanted to have fun games.
Yeah, we didn't want the games to be like horribly mismatched and that sort of thing. So Paul, how was it for you? How was playing 5-color charm control?
I gotta say it. I was talking about it on the Discord the other day, and the best representation I had was like just a series of emojis where it's just like happy face, confused face, thinking face, head explode face.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was complicated. Yeah. It was definitely. It was more than I'm used to for playing Magic.
Yeah, and part of the issue is that there's so many moving pieces in the deck, right? And one thing, to give you a window into our coaching session, like we sort of talked about 3 things, which was firstly, you got to make sure your hand can actually cast your spells.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to find
the starting hand.
Yeah, you got to find the right colors. Then working out if your spells actually did anything. Then working out how to win the game. And I think somewhat problematically, the answer you asked me in the coaching session. So how do I win the game? And I said eventually.
Yeah, and that was, I think that was probably like my biggest issue that I ran into, is that I'm a simple man, my general go-to for Magic, and because especially since I usually am playing like draft or something, right? Yeah. My usual go-to is like, just kind of stompy or like some sort of, smashing, getting creatures on the battlefield and punching the other person with the creatures. And it was about like halfway through my first game when I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Like I have two Jaces on the field.
Oh, yeah, I feel like I ought to be winning.
Yeah, how am I not winning? But like I have nothing to do. I guess I just keep drawing and hope that the thing to do comes at some point.
Well, and you started doing the right thing, which was upticking the Jace, because that does eventually win the game.
Right. Yeah, and that was like, is that how I win here, or do I just
keyword eventually
completely? Yeah.
And I think that was actually when we were evaluating, like, like these decks will make for good matchups. We were right. I think they did make for interesting and powerful matchups. You and Corey's second game was excellent, very exciting. But problematically, in giving you a control deck, and in fact in giving anyone in this showdown a control deck, we sort of made an expectation that you would have enough of an understanding of what the Highlander metagame was like to know how to value certain cards. And I think that was the biggest issue I saw on your face as you were playing. I was sort of commentating and I was watching you think about, okay, Corey's just played this card, do I care? And I was like, Paul, you care, this is important, but that's not obvious.
Right. And and it's, I tend to be I'm not, to be honest, I'm not that experienced a control player in general. Like even without the additional complication of the Highlander format stuff, and so that aspect is like, I always find that difficult to like, what do I care about aspect of the control matchup.
Yeah. No, and I mean, that's, I talk about this when I talk about game design all the time, right? That's actually what every game boils down to, and not just Magic, not just whatever, not strategy games, everything. Like, if you want to be good at games, the fundamental question you have to ask yourself is, what is this game about right now?
Right.
And it's the hardest question to answer in the world, right? Like, there's a reason Magnus Carlsen's the best chess player. He can figure out what every chess game is about, which is really interesting. But problematically in this format, it's not as easy. So one thing we should talk about is we talked about potentially making small alterations to the deck in order to make them a little more playable for new players. Unfortunately for you and Graham, Jeremy and I both played the Thursday Night Highlander event right the day before, and neither of us had enough time to build another deck. So both of you got decks we would play at a tournament. So there was no dumbing down. The only change I made for your deck is that I changed out about 20-ish cards that were foreign for English versions.
Right.
How was playing with some foreign cards still?
It wasn't. There was, like I've seen the cards just through sort of osmosis enough to know, So Liam gave me this cheat sheet. These are the 9 cards that were still foreign language cards.
You'll note 3 of them have 3 modes each.
Right, and so like counterspell, that's not a problem.
Manageable,
right?
yeah.
We
Counter
all
target spell
know
as it is being cast.
And young Pyromancer, Creeping Tar Pit, Hollowed Fountain. Once I realized which of the multi-lands it was, that was no problem.
Manageable.
And it has the mana symbols on it, even in their language.
Exactly.
So that was no problem. Factor Fiction, pretty straightforward. Although I was actually kind of hoping to cast Factor Fiction.
Oh, that would have been excellent.
Just to be like, here, Corey, you now deal with what I have to deal with. But yeah, the Collective Brutality is a charm, Azorius charm. There was definitely a okay, here's the thing, read the thing. Yeah. Okay, this thing. Let's read that again. Okay.
Chat definitely erupted in. There was an uproar when you drew "Is it Charm" and chat realized it wasn't English. There was a lot of people typing like, "How could you, Liam? I can't believe you've done this to Paul." That sort of thing. And I fair enough, really. I probably should have tracked down some English versions of these cards.
And then the great play of my messing up. I forget what it was first.
Oh, you tried to cast. I think it might have been this. You tried to cast 3 different spells.
Yeah, it was. I tried to cast one of the charms, and it only worked if the creature had power above 5.
You tried to cast Abzan Charm, and it only kills the thing with power 3 or greater, and you were trying to kill a 2-power creature.
And then I was like, okay, I can't do that. I'll just Collective Brutality.
Yeah, which is a Hexerai, not a Spontaneous.
Well, yeah, which is a sorcery.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, fine, I'll just do another thing.
Yeah, and then you fatal pushed it. Which was the play I wanted you to make all along. So, I mean, well done. You found it by process of elimination.
Yeah, it was what I've been sort of thinking about this deck a lot, actually, in the intervening time, and just because it was super interesting.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of in old Scry magazines or whatever, the puzzle.
Yeah.
Things where it's you have 1 turn, this guy's got this out, this is what's in your hand, how do you win? Or stuff like that. It felt like that every turn. I was like, okay. I felt like at any juncture, it's there's a way somewhere in this deck to win. And I know it's cool, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, and I mean that was one thing I noted in the commentator's box is that I use the phrase analysis paralysis a lot. Which it definitely is a huge problem in this deck. Let's say you have a 7-card Magic hand. Typically, you have a couple lands in your hand, a couple spells. So you're deciding which of the spells you cast. Well, in an average hand in this deck, you have 5 spells and they have 3 modes. So really, you have 15 spells,
right,
or whatever. Right? You have a huge number of choices, and part of the problem is I think part of the problem is you might have actually been too smart to play this deck because you were clearly getting to...
definitely was the problem.
Well, no, so you were clearly getting to at least level 2 where you were thinking, okay, I want to save this, right? That was part of the reason you didn't immediately Fatal Push was because you were like, well, this Fatal Push is really good. I kind of want to save it. But I think if you were on level 1 where you were like, this kills this thing. Perfect, I'll cast it. I mean, you might not have done better, but it would have been easier to play, probably.
Right, smart enough to sort of outsmart myself.
Right, exactly. You were trying... You were definitely approaching playing the deck optimally, which is working out valuing different cards in different spots, valuing how versatile a card is versus a card that maybe is more direct, which is good. That's actually long-term what you want to be doing in Magic, but certainly led to, I think, more time being taken trying to figure out what the play was.
I was saying afterwards, like you're talking about like the having all the options in your hand, and it was like, again, like sort of halfway through the first game, like I had my hand and I could see the cards and I had to look up the thing and whatever. But like I had, and then you've got like, okay, this is all the stuff I can do. I can deal with this. And then as soon as I drew the first tutor,
Yeah.
then I was like, uh-oh.
Oh God.
Now theoretically every card in the deck
Is in my hand.
is in my hand.
Yep.
Could theoretically be in my hand, except some of the tutors don't put it in your hand. Some of the tutors put it into
Like the top of your deck.
Put it on top. The Mystic Tutor
Yeah, Mystical Tutor.
was one of the ones.
Yeah. Yeah, it was sort of funny throughout the entire event how many like accidental cheats there were. Like you drew 2 cards one turn, Ian drew 2 cards one turn.
Well, it's no. I think it wasn't that I drew 2 cards. It's that I.
Oh, you tutored to your hand.
I
with the
tutored
mystical
to the.
tool.
I
Yeah.
tutored to at the end of the turn to my hand, and then drew.
You then drew for your turn. Yeah, yeah.
That particular one made me so sad, because the card I had drawn was like
I know.
really what I really
yeah,
wanted.
I know. When the judge call came and you were like, I have to.
like,
I was
oh.
going to draw this anyway.
I
And it's
wanted
like,
it.
that's not how that works, unfortunately. But you are right. It's a shame.
It was Rohan, in fact. Rohan.
Ruhan of the
Ruhan
Fomori.
of the Fomori.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or whatever the hell the German version of him was.
Ruhan von den Fomori.
Mm.
It's actually not that bad. Easier one to pronounce. So you have any closing thoughts? Anything else you'd like to say about the deck? I have a couple that I can make.
I'd love, like, I mean, I'd love to see, I'd like to see you play the deck. Or even just like aside from, the skill in optimal play, which is of course, takes a lot of Magic skill and stuff. Literally just like knowing what all the cards in the deck are, right?
Yeah.
And obviously when you're the one who builds the deck, you have a pretty good idea of what the capabilities are. But like like when I was trying to find an answer for Corey's artifact thing, and I'm like, I remember like going through this vaguely that there was like a couple artifact destruction things.
Yeah.
So let's just start looking.
Right.
But like if I had, when you're doing those scry or those tutor effects, you're like, what am I actually looking for right now?
And in some ways, it was good that the tutor you're using was Tainted Pact, because you got to read every card. In fact, you had to. You just had to flip over cards, and you're like, that doesn't work, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. This one works.
Yeah, and I gotta say, the amount of the actual amount that I started enjoying myself and relaxed when I had a deck that was like 20 cards big and 1 life. When I had 1 life and deck 20 cards big, the amount of options suddenly narrowed down to like only a couple things, and I was like, I can play this. This is cool. I can do
Perfect.
this.
I now know how to evaluate things. Well, and it's interesting, right? Because that is exactly what I'm talking about. You now are in a situation where what the game is about is razor obvious to everyone. You're at 1 life. Corey has to deal 1 damage to you. You have to not die.
Right.
And so as a result, there's only a couple of cards that matter. And what happens in a regular game is, well, that's true at all times. There is a thing that the game is about. But oftentimes there's like 6 or 7 other things that are red herrings that you could conceivably think are what the game are about and be wrong.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's sort of, it's very interesting when that happens. And you even, after not dying, you made another play which was very good, which is that you immediately tried to turn the game around and kill Corey right away by flashing back to Grixis Charm. And I would have done it a turn later, just when it was actually lethal, as opposed to putting her to 7.
Yeah, it was one of those things where it's like,
I can do this.
Who knows what the future is? She's got nothing out right now.
Yeah,
I might as well get while the getting's good.
Yeah, and I mean that's very reasonable. But that you correctly pivoted your evaluation, right? Because you were like, okay, I want to not die. Okay, I'm not dead. Now I need to end the game quickly because surely there's more things in her deck that are going to kill me.
Right.
And so I thought that was good. I thought that was actually very reasonable.
Thank you.
So one thing that I really like about this deck, and you mentioned knowing what cards do, and I think most Magic players have this sort of like disturbingly encyclopedic knowledge of many Magic cards. It just happens. And And this deck in many ways is sort of archetypal of like someone who's played a lot of Magic and a lot of games, because you really do need to be able to call upon a bunch of very random cards to figure out how you can win the game. So like at one point in game 1 against Corey, I was in the booth and you were facing down a bunch of 1/1s, and I was like, oh yeah, the play here is pretty simple. You like cast Spellseeker, get Mystical Tutor for Jund Charm, kill all other creatures. It's very easy. And then I was like, all right, it's actually not that easy. I don't know why.
It's I haven't reached the second step of tutoring for a different tutor so you can get the card you want.
Yeah.
Like that's like one level deeper
that's like level 3 maybe.
That I'm used to evaluating stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so I don't know, the deck was fun to build for you. I wish I had maybe built you like a 4-color version, maybe something that was a little simpler. I think that if I had it all to do over again, I think that's the change I would have made, and I think I would have put a few more ways to win the game in your deck, just to make it a little easier for you to actually win the game.
To sort of find the thing to make it.
Yeah, exactly. Just to not even necessarily simplify it, but just to make your game plan more obvious. Because that version you were playing had about 10 ways to win the game, and a lot of times you just weren't going to see them in your opening hand.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, it was a lot of fun, and like I said, I'd love to see the deck sort of be played in its optimal form by with somebody who knows exactly what they're doing. I feel like it's the kind of game, it's the kind of deck where it can sort of win from almost any position.
Yeah.
That you can very quickly sort of
turn a game
pivot
on its
to
head.
different stuff and things, and just when you think you're out, you jump back in.
Well,
that
hopefully
kind of stuff.
we'll get Jared to play it on a Friday Night Paper Fight after I'm gone.
That'd be
I'm
good,
sure
that'd
he
be
has all the cards. All right, well, so that's been our wrap up. This has been Paul. I'm Liam. Thanks so much, and we'll see you with the next person.
Hey everybody, I'm Jeremy here with Graham,
Hi.
the victorious champions of the Friday Night Paper Fight.
That was a sweat.
Yeah, no kidding. Especially that last match.
Oh my goodness.
I definitely, going in, thought that would be the toughest match if we ended up
The Aristocrats
coming
matchup?
into it. Yeah, just because their sort of plan is to be good against removal spells, and your sort of plan is to have removal spells.
Yeah, there was so many. Yeah, the Aristocrats deck has a lot of targets, so I was just really concerned about. I can't remember. Did I go looking for Toxic Deluge at one point?
You did, yeah.
Yeah, because I was like,
Yeah, that was this super crazy play where you like got Toxic Deluge, deluged for 1 to kill some stuff, then attacked to get back the Monarch, then
Right, yes.
Walking Ballista to kill another thing, managed to keep your things on the board, got most of Corey's things off the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely the biggest, and I know that I don't know what order these interviews are being used in. I'm sure this is something that Paul brought up as well with Liam's deck. It's definitely the biggest anxiety part was tutors.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, do I just I don't know what to look for because I don't know these decks, and it wasn't until that round where I was like,
You started to get a little bit more of a hang of it after getting some more games under your belt.
not even that. It's just sort of like, there's tutors. The deck has answers. I'm just going to say that I cast this tutor and then see what I want to get,
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like, okay, let's just flip through. I mean, I took a while to go through every card in the deck and be like, what am I looking for here?
A lot of the time, that's what you do. Even seasoned players with the deck are like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this, but I'm just going to go through and see if there's anything I forgot. And that's totally legit.
I guess so. I was piloting your mono black control deck.
Mid-rangey
We said it was control, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I think the game plan is to control. You end up being a mid-rangey deck against some slower decks or some blue decks maybe, but...
And this is a deck that you've actually piloted to...
Yeah, so this is the literal 100-card deck I played in weekly Highlander tournaments.
Oh, sweet.
2 weeks previously, so I didn't water it down at all. It was the exact version I would play.
Nice.
So you were thrown a little into the deep end.
It's okay. It was. I I didn't have quite the breadth of decisions that the Charms deck had.
That overall, I'd say it's a medium difficulty deck to play. It's not the highest difficulty decks are like decks where you either have 1,000,001 decisions to make, or you're the combo decks where you like really need to assemble specific pieces, and the margins are super small in whether you're able to go off or not.
The lands, it was definitely more linear than like the lands deck, but I mean there was still like I remember in the first match against Ian there was a thing where I'm like I had a tutor. And I was like, well, I don't really know what to tutor for, so I'm going to pass the turn. And if I'd just gone looking for, like, Drain Life, I would have killed Ian.
Yeah, there were a few cards that would have just... Because he was at 2, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and you had like, Cabal Coffers, Lake of the Dead.
Yeah.
So, you had...
Which Cabal Coffers doesn't tap for mana.
No.
Doesn't create its own mana. You got to remember that, Graham.
When it was hard because in the coaching session, I definitely brought that up, but it was hard for me to know, like, which cards you were familiar with, so which things to try to coach you on more than the other. Because as you said, the deck is like pretty linear. You've played a bunch of Magic before, so I don't need to tell you like you don't need to kill X creature, wait to kill the good one.
Yeah.
You know how to do that, and so I like mostly tried to like tell you about some like unique tutor targets. Like we talked about Sorcerer's Spyglass a bit, and how it was an answer to like things that were difficult to answer.
Yeah, I was going back and forth on that one. That was the decision in the tutoring against the Aristocrats deck, was that I wasn't sure if I should get the Toxic Deluge, which is what I ended up doing, but my other big consideration was Sorcerer's Spyglass, naming Skull Clamp.
Yeah, because that thing was burying you in card advantage.
Yeah, she was just running away with making kobolds every turn, and like my Kalitas wasn't doing anything against the kobolds because they were tokens.
Exactly.
And so I was just like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing here. So yeah, that was tough. I don't know if it worked out. I don't know if that was the right decision, but you know, yeah, that was definitely. I mean, you could probably see me humming and hawing between those two.
You were like thumbing some cards, and I think your line might have been better. I like wasn't sure what you were gonna Toxic Deluge for. I was worried you were gonna lose too much of your board, and I didn't actually see the Toxic Deluge for 1. Then down tick Karn to get attack, down tick Karn to get Walking Ballista, clear out the Skursdag High Priest. Because if you Toxic Deluge for 2, you had a Custody Lich and a Kalitas in play.
Yeah, and I didn't want to lose those.
But Corey had Bloodthrone Vampire. And so Toxic Deluge was just never killing the Bloodthrone Vampire. She had too many creatures out.
Yeah.
And you needed to get the Skursdag High Priest off the board, otherwise you were just going to start dying to 5/5 flyers.
Oh yeah, Skursdag High Priest is. I was just talking about this earlier. It's one of those. I think Limited Resources came up with this sort of nickname term for it, and it might have been Ben Starr kind of as a guest episode on that one. It's a card that creates a mini game.
Yeah.
Right. It's like when the card's on the table. I think he was talking about it in terms of Dominaria Limited, where there's like Slimefoot, for example. But it's like Skursdag High Priest. When the card's on the table, you have to play a different game of Magic than you were just playing.
Certainly, yeah.
Right? You need to like craft how you're going to do things in a way that doesn't allow your opponent to just start crapping out 5/5 flyers.
Yeah, that is.
And I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Because especially with the Aristocrats deck, they can. It's pretty incidental for them to trigger Morbid.
Almost automatic.
Yeah.
It's like very hard.
It's the deck's plan. Stuff is going to die.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so in either of the matches, did you feel the deck let you down at all? Did you?
I don't think so, no. I mean...
There was that one game where you almost got Merit Laged out and you had some... had a stroke of luck.
That was so lucky. That was definitely lucky, yeah. Ian went looking for... I can't remember how he was tutoring for these lands.
He just pulled them off the top with Oracle of Moldiah in play.
That was it? No, he must. No, he went looking for Vesuvian, for Thespian Sage and Dark Depths. Maybe it was Primeval Titan.
Oh,
there was some way that he put them both into play, and I was like, oh.
No, because he had Azusa in play.
I can't remember. Anyway, the point is,
Azusa in play, and he had Horn of Greed, right?
Yeah.
So I think he just played some lands. He already had Thespian Stage in play, and then he drew Dark Depths, I think.
I thought it was all at once. Anyway.
Maybe.
So I'm trying to figure out, I don't know exactly the timing on when you're supposed to activate Thespian Stage and pull off the whole Dark Depths combo and everything. And I'm like, okay, I thought I had a turn. For some reason, I thought one of the men tapped. Anyway, I thought I had a little bit more time. So I was like, okay, I got to figure out what to do. And then he's like, anyway, boop, 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 and makes the Merit Lodge. And I'm like,
yeah, and he had that down. He just
he nailed it.
He's just like, do this, and you're like, Uh-huh.
It was like,
Oh no.
oh no, I'm in so much trouble. And yeah, it was.
And it's funny, in the booth, Serge and I were talking, because you can do it at instant speed. So usually you want to do it at the end of your opponent's turn to prevent them from doing what you did and like edicting things away, except you also had a wasteland, which you then played, which makes it impossible to combo, because then you're just able to wasteland either the Dark Depths or the Thespian stage in response to the activation. And
So that works?
No
So if you
merit
activate Thespian stage targeting Dark Depths, and Dark Depths gets wastelanded in response, then Thespian stage has nothing to copy, and that doesn't
exactly.
resolve?
Or you can even wasteland the Thespian stage.
Right, but then they still have a Dark Depths eventually turning into
Yeah,
something.
that takes 30 mana. You're probably winning before
Fair.
you got to do that. But
Yeah, so I hadn't played it. I hadn't played the Wasteland the turn prior because I wanted to. There was something else in play. I can't remember. Oh, right. Yeah, he definitely got the Thespian stage and the Dark Depths at the same time, because I was sandbagging the Wasteland in case because I wanted to kill the Mazavith, but I didn't know that I didn't want him to know that I was going to be able to take care of it. And if I had played it, he wouldn't have been able to do that. So yeah, lucky that he did it main phase, because then the Wasteland didn't do anything. So I drew for the turn. I want to say that I also drew off of a Phyrexian Arena, or there was some other way that I was drawing. Couldn't find an answer, and then drew.
You played Wasteland and got to draw off Ian's Horn of Greed.
Yeah, got to draw off Ian's Horn of Greed, which gave me the thing that I needed, because I had to kill Azusa, but not with Cast Down, because Azusa is legendary.
Yeah.
I can't remember how I killed Azusa, actually. And
Was it Collective Brutality?
yes, it was. It was like Collective Brutality, and then Gatekeeper of Malakir to make him sack the
Gatekeeper kicked to
Merit Lage,
sack the Merit Lage.
which I had just enough mana to do all of that. And I was just like, go. Yeah, that was a sweat. That was definitely luck to draw the Gatekeeper off. It was the last possible thing I could have drawn.
Yeah, and even in game 1, Ian had Eldritch Evolution, and you gauntied the Primeval Titan the turn before he could cast the Eldritch Evolution.
Yeah.
Which, of course, he knew was there because he scryed with Nissa.
Right, yes.
And so he would have been able to Primeval Titan you if you didn't take Primeval Titan with Gaunty that exact turn. So those games were, like, a lot closer than they may have seemed.
That was always fun when you get to play. I love Gaunty. Like in
that
draft,
card's so good.
Very good in draft, but especially in constructed, when your opponent in a situation like that where they have Nissa and they're like, okay, scry 2. All right, I'm going to put these back in this specific order on the top of the deck, and you're like, cool. Let me see what those are and make sure that whatever you're planning does not happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, because he topped, which is like one of the scariest things that can happen if your opponent scries 2 and then tops.
It was great too, because you exile face down, right? So I look and I'm like, I'm going to take this card, and Ian's like, gee, I wonder which one you took. And then on my next turn, it's like, hey, guess what? It's your Primeval Titan. He's like, yeah, I know.
Well, one of the other ones was Crucible of Worlds, right?
Yeah.
And I was actually almost arguing to take the Crucible.
I was tempted.
Because you had a tutor which could have gone and got Wasteland.
Yeah.
And then you would have got to Crucible Wasteland, the lands deck, which would have been some
the lands deck,
poetic justice.
Yeah,
but
that would have been good too.
No, I think your line was definitely better. It's just, there's something ironic about Wasteland locking the lands deck with their own Crucible of Worlds. That's like kind of sick.
That would have been pretty funny. Hateful, but good. I like that, yeah.
Yeah.
That was good stuff. What was the other? Right, I never got to face the Charms deck, though.
No.
That would have been an interesting matchup.
Yeah, Liam and I played that one on Thursday, the day before the tournament, in round 1 of the Highlander tournament. He crushed me game 1. He recalled a bunch, but I was able to take out game 2 and 3. I found some hand attack and was able to just get too many things on board for him to
hand
deal
attack.
with.
That was the game 3 in the finals against Corey. She unfortunately had to mulligan to 6.
And then you had the old...
And then I had, Swamp Mox him to Turak.
Yeah.
Which we were saying later, like, maybe wasn't even the right play.
Yeah, so your hand was completely unfairly busted in game 3. You had 2 Swamps, Mox Jet, and Soul Ring in your opening hand, along with him to Turak and Batterskull. Mm-hmm. And so I was actually arguing in the booth, like, I don't know which one's correct. But and you also had Knight's Whisper because you were on the draw that game.
That's correct. Yeah.
So starting hand, those were your.
I was on the play.
You were on the play. Did
'Cause
you only have?
I
Did you
lost
only have
game
one
two.
land?
Maybe I only had one land. I don't know. I lost game 2. No, that's 7.
2 lands, Mox, Soul Ring. Oh yeah. You also had Night's Whisper for
Yeah.
sure. That's
no, I
7.
did. Yeah.
And so my argument actually was to Night's Whisper, like play out all your fast mana, Night's Whisper on turn 1, because then if you play out the Soul Ring and the Mox, you're able to cast Batterskull on turn 2,
Yeah.
and then Hymn to Tark on turn 3, which is probably still good,
Probably. Yeah.
but like you just like get to cast less cards if you cast Hymn to Tark on turn 1. But
It's the early.
still
Did I ever
really,
tell
really
you
good.
about the time I was horrible to a child at GP Vancouver?
No.
We were doing just one of the normal side event drafts, and I was playing against like an 11-year-old.
Yep.
And he had to. This was Theros block, and so he mulliganed to 6, and then mulliganed to 5, and then showed his mom his hand of 5, and she was like, I mean, you gotta, I guess, right? And he's like, okay, all right, I'll keep the 5. And it was my turn, and I'm like, cool. Swamp Thoughtseize.
Oh no.
Yeah. So the turn 1 hand attack is, I guess, my thing.
Yeah.
Not playing black. But yeah, because if I'd done land, Mox, Soul Ring, and then I could have Night's Whisper myself on turn 1. Yeah. Because I ended up getting Batterskull down. We were actually talking about this afterwards.
Yeah.
Because on turn 4, I had 6 mana.
Turn 3.
On turn 3.
Yeah.
Turn 3, I had 6 mana. And there was a decision between either Batterskull, which I ended up doing, or what I was humming and hawing about, and you were saying later
We talked after,
that you suspected that this might have been something I was considering. I had the mana and the cards to either do the Batterskull or cast both Phyrexian Arena and Vampire Nighthawk.
Yeah.
Which might have been better just to start refilling my hand more quickly.
And especially given the context of Corey had Bitter Blossom in play, and Nighthawk just like, and I think at this point you didn't have Custody Lich yet, right?
Not yet, no.
No, but yeah, Nighthawk just lines up super well against Bitter Blossom, and the mono black deck off it, especially on the busted mana draws, just wants to start getting card advantage as soon as possible. Get like one of the Phyrexian Arena type effects in play, just to, because one of the deck has a lot of mana sources. It had like 38-ish lands plus mana rocks. You're over 40 mana sources. So one of the ways the deck can lose, especially on those draws, is if your opponent's able to sort of claw their way back into the game and you just end up drawing a bunch of lands. So getting a Phyrexian Arena type effect in play is one of the best ways to counteract that happening, because you're in black, you don't really have card selection. You just gotta
get as many as I can.
brute force. You're just saying, I'll take them all, take my life, I don't care.
Whatever, who needs life when
You
I
have
got all these
Batterskull
cards?
and Nighthawk.
Yeah, that's true. There we go. But yeah, I had a blast.
Yeah.
Great deck, super fun. Like a lot of people afterwards were like, so you're going to build a Highlander deck? It's like, I've been thinking about that ever since I started running tech on this podcast. And like, obviously it's super fun. I barely have the time to do constructed, but this was terrific. I hope we get to do something like this again.
Definitely would do again. It was one of the weirdest things for me, because I've never been so like anxious and nervous watching somebody. I was just so invested, but like had no control. It's just like,
do the thing.
Yeah, all the time is just like, is he gonna see it? Oh yes, Graham, you're the greatest. And then at the end, when you didn't, end of game 1 against Ian, when you didn't cast the demonic tutor, I was like, Graham, you have demonic tutor. What are you doing?
You can get him. You got him right now.
I was like, we talked about this. Because like one of the last things I said during our coaching session, which was actually like, I think it was the shortest coaching session of anyone, because I was mostly just like, yeah, you have a bunch of black cards. Yeah. These are some things you can do. But one of the last things I said was like, if you have a pile of mana and a tutor, you have like Grey Merchant, Drain Life, and Walking Ballista. So you have some direct damage. And you're like, all right, sweet. Yeah,
and I just blanked on that. And figured it out later, but yeah.
Yeah, well, and it's hard, because you were like bringing you in and we're like, here's way too much information that you can't possibly like intake it all at once. So like from a coaching standpoint, it was super hard on what to focus on and what to not. But yeah,
I think it all went well.
Super fun.
Yeah,
would do again.
Definitely.
Yeah. On to the next interview.
Hello everyone, I'm Serge. I'm joined by Ian.
Hello.
And Ian was my representative in the Highlander by Proxy event that we did on the past Friday. And I gave him Turboland. I think there's a lot of expectation that I bring in a deck with Fast Bond, which is somewhat of my pet card. And I was really impressed with how you piloted this.
I'm very glad for you to say that because it's this could have gone very badly. I think more than anything, what you're saying is a testament to you being able to put together a deck that I'm going to say human being can actually somewhat manage to finagle into doing things, maybe?
So it's interesting you should mention that. So there's a lot of ways to build Turboland. If I was piloting this, I've gone through 2-color, 3-color, and even 4-color variations. And knowing that you were going to be piloting it, I went for a more streamlined version. I went for just green-blue. And it was neat, because when we did training, I sat Ian down. I was like, okay, there are 3 ways to pilot this. Way 1, just play it as a green-blue ramp deck. There's a lot of big green creatures. Hopefully you can get there. Method 2 was Merit Lash combo, which you pulled off to...
Somehow, yeah.
I'm curious about that. I want to go through that afterwards. And number 3 was as a Fast Bond combo deck, which we never really got to see happen.
No.
So how helpful was the training?
The training was actually great to have. I think what the success, the minor success that came out of this deck is basically down to your deck construction and your training. Because I'm a very, very casual Magic player. Like I'm one of those guys who I read the card and then I play it. And then I read the opponent's card because I have no idea what these cards do. There's like 1,000 of these, right?
Like 14,000?
Yeah, so yeah, there's no way I'm holding even 30 of these in my head.
Sure, okay.
So you being able to sit me down beforehand and like say, okay, this is, and like show me with a pile of cards specifically, like this is a combo. If you can see these, you can do this and make this work. Here is another way that this can work. And that's kind of what happened with the Merit Lage. Is that we got to the position where I drew
Dark Depths and Thespian Stage are the 2 cards.
Yeah, and I think I had at least one of those in my opening hand.
Yeah, you started with Thespian Stage. This was game 2 against Graham. You started with Thespian Stage in your hand, and you played a Horn of Greed. And you had a Horn of Greed in play, which is an artifact that lets, anytime a player plays a land, they can draw a card, which is symmetrical, but you also had Azusa, which is a legendary green creature for 2 and a green that lets you play 2 additional lands. And so you got to play 3 lands that turn, drawing Dark Depths off of one of the lands you played, and then you immediately slammed down Dark Depths, Thespian Stage, activated it right then, made your Merit Lodge, and I was like, Ian can't lose this game.
Which turns out not accurate.
I think that was just a tremendous amount of bad luck.
No, it felt good to just even have it resolve.
Yeah. You got to make Merit Lodge, which I was so proud. You should have seen me in the booth. I was clapping, I was hooting, I was hollering.
In one turn. And I think that's actually, I've heard Highlander be referred to as powerful magic. And that's the first time I've, like this Merit Lodge, that's usually a mechanic that's supposed to go off like once, every 3 months on a kitchen table. This is a card that's designed never to go off.
So how did it feel to have a 2020 flying indestructible token on your side?
For the 3 seconds it was there, it was grand.
That's super funny. So unfortunately, it seemed like being against mono black control was not a great matchup. I don't think you did anything wrong when you're piloting the deck. No. You were playing all these big threats. The unfortunate thing was Graham had a really strong start. And every time you were playing your Thrag Tusks, you were looking down across these like 6-mana demons. I wonder how things would have gone differently if you were against the other decks.
It's a good question. I'm really not sure on that myself. But the ramping didn't feel as fast to me as it would have against what I'd consider to be a normal deck.
Right.
Like normally I look into ramp and I just, you get on the gas and you're gone. And in this, it seems like there's enough on the other side that they can keep up, even if they're not keeping up with the actual ramp itself.
Oh, so you're saying we should be faster with our ramp?
I wonder if that might have been the case in that particular matchup.
Well, Graham had Sol Ring one of those games. Did he have Sol Ring both games? Like he had a lot of ramp on his side as well.
He had Sol Ring. He had Moxen out. He was.
Yeah. those are what we in the industry like to refer to as the nut draw. So it's kind of tough when you're supposed to be the ramp deck and they ramp harder. Interesting. I wonder if I didn't put enough ramp in here. And that's sort of the downside with a turbo land deck is the significance of playing a land. You're not always trying to get them out as quickly as possible. And then, the matchup there is just so tough.
Well, there's also the random aspect of the game too.
Yeah.
It probably just came down to draws.
Yeah.
And I think I mulled the 6 on both those hands at least.
Okay, that's tough too.
Yeah, so it was not a case of it was just a bad draw or a mediocre draw that shouldn't have been kept. It was definitely a question of should I keep this and how far do I go down?
So how did Highlander feel compared to other Magic? We've drafted before, we've played Commander before. This was your first time ever playing Highlander.
And I've heard, I'm going to use another anecdote that I think I've heard Alex use before, is that he likes to play Highlander because it lets you play Magic with good cards.
Okay.
And this was a pile of 100 good cards.
Okay.
And it felt really good. It was never a case of like, well, I'm playing this because I need to fill some space, or I'm playing this because this is going to fit on curve. It was, every time I'm looking down at these cards saying, not is this a good card and should I play this, but when should I play this?
What didn't you like about Highlander?
The only thing I could say that I dislike about Highlander as a format, and I think this goes for any Magic, is just the amount of pre-existing knowledge that you kind of have to have in order to play, I guess, competitively or with any sort of speed.
Sure, there's a little bit of a barrier to entry there.
It is, but it's not that bad.
Okay.
It's not as bad as people think, and with enough time and effort, I'm sure I could commit enough of this to memory to make myself decent.
That was one of the things that I really tried to keep in mind when I made this deck. Was there's a lot of very powerful cards that would normally go in this deck that I didn't even want to include. So for example, I left out Sylvan Library. So Sylvan Library is a 2-mana green enchantment for 1 and a green that says on your draw step, draw 3 cards and then put 2 back. And I was just like, there's already so many decisions to make.
Yeah.
I just don't want to have to occupy more brain space in your head for there.
Tutoring seemed to be an issue with some of the other players in this deck specifically.
Graham was talking about being afraid to cast Demonic Tutor because he's like, what do I even get? And we joke in the commentary booth, like literally anything. And we're like, he could die on the spot, but
it's a branching path thing. Once you get you can grab anything, but what's that next step for that card that you've grabbed afterwards? That's where the education becomes difficult.
So the interesting thing about all those branching paths is every time you play a card, they all disappear. So there's almost this fear of, I only get one shot. It's a singleton format. If I use this card at the inopportune time, it's gone forever. So you're like, Demonic Tutor is so powerful, it can get me anything. What if I get the wrong thing? Then of the other 80 cards that are still in my deck, I've closed the door of ever being able to draw them.
I mean, let's be honest. I actually had a bit of that paralysis of choice just off of some of the fetch lands.
Right.
Like, I need to get a land. Oh God, yeah, it has to be a forest. That still doesn't help.
Was there anything you wanted to do with the deck that you didn't get a chance to do?
I would have liked to have had a chance to at least try for some of the other win cons.
Okay, like some of the fast bond loops or something like that?
Yeah, exactly. Like I didn't see fast bond come up in my plays at all, and that kind of felt a bit. It was missed opportunity, I think.
So I think I actually realized an error I made in deck construction. By trying to streamline it as much as possible, I actually reduced the chances of you to find fast bond. Because we pulled out a lot of the tutors and stuff like that, if you just didn't naturally draw it, your chances of getting to play with that card were almost nil. Because green by itself has, I don't know of any ways to just tutor for an enchantment by itself. Typically, I'd play white to find it, and blue usually just cantrip through your deck as much as possible. But as a way to reduce the amount of choices you have to make, I actually cut a lot of the draw spells. I'm so sorry.
No, that's fine.
I deprived you of playing with my favorite card in the deck.
No, I got to play some very cool cards coming out there. Where was I going to go with that tutoring example? I can't remember for the life of me. Nope, it's gone now.
There was a time you had, what's the 3-mana sorcery that lets you tutor for a creature? Eldritch Evolution. You had Eldritch Evolution in your hand a couple times.
Yes.
And I was wondering why you weren't casting it. So you had like a creature in play, you're looking at stuff, you had like an Eternal Witness and some stuff like that.
I wasn't entirely sure when I should have been playing that was the issue, because it's like, this is one of those ones where you tutor for a specific example, and it's, in the case, X+2.
Yeah.
And that, not knowing, not having committed to memory exactly what's in
Sure.
there, and then I can go through the deck, and I'm now looking at every one of 100 cards, trying to decide, pulling them out, trying to decide, and that's just really going to slow down the game.
When is the right time to do that? No, that's fair. I don't know. I was still super impressed watching. There's a lot of times. So Jeremy and I were in the booth, and Jared would be like, "Okay, Graham should do X, Y, Z," and then immediately after Graham would do X, Y, Z, I was like, "I'd love to see if Ian would do this," and then you'd follow suit. And we were so excited.
That's actually really good to know, and it's very interesting considering that I am such a novice in this area to see that these plays are so self-obvious.
Yeah.
At least.
The one time there's a difference was not casting Eldritch Evolution, but of course I can see it in my head. I was like, "Oh yeah, Ian, play the Eternal Witness and then cast Eldritch Evolution to go into one of your high power 5-drops," because that's one of the ways you could try and claw back.
I remember specifically having that in hand at one point and having thinking about going to get the Primetime, the Primeval Titan, because you mentioned that specifically, and I committed that to memory and realized, no, wait, he has that. Graham has that in his. Yeah,
Gonti stole your Primeval Titan at one time. That was so funny. I don't know. I love this deck. I might even run a very similar 100 cards next time I go to a Highlander tournament.
There are a lot of fun cards in here that I've noticed over the while, and just a lot of planeswalkers, which I did not expect actually for this.
They're just powerful. You see a lot of planeswalkers in Highlander, but only the best ones. And actually, I suppose that's the best of any card you use. It's just like take all the best creatures, take all the best lands, take all the best planeswalkers, just take all the best cards from Highlander.
Yeah, I was really only playing good cards.
And the reason for it is as you said, there's 14,000 cards that have been printed, and this is one of the few formats that lets you play all of them. And the 100 cards sets a restriction on you that, Legacy, you might only have 15 unique cards in your deck because you're playing 4 of stuff like that. You actually have to start getting deep. So in a lands deck, okay, I know the 3 best land spells, but I need 10. Where do you start to find those? And you get this really interesting deck building challenge, but you also get to play these really fun, powerful cards that you don't get to see anywhere else. Yeah. So any last sort of thoughts on the format? I know you don't play a lot of constructed. Is there a way? Have we got you hooked? Are you now a committed Highlander player?
Oh Lord, no. I would need to go back to school for at least 4 years before I could consider getting into Highlander.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's fair.
That said, I don't think that anyone who actually does any amount of constructed, or anyone who does do regular drafting, would probably have very little difficulty getting to this format, I think.
Okay, cool.
Because you've got that knowledge already. Your pump is primed for that.
Okay.
And I think we wouldn't have an issue getting into it. And of course, you get to play with all the fun stuff from the past, which is
if you've been playing for a while, you get those little nostalgia cards in there.
Exactly.
Well, Ian, thank you so much for piloting this deck, for doing me proud in the event. And it was really good sort of hearing your thoughts on the format and on your experience.
Thank you so much, Serge, for giving me the opportunity to play with this. If nothing else, it was fun to play with a deck that probably costs more than my car does right now.
Tough but fair. All right. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Alex, and this is my champion,
Coriander Dickinson.
You got the whole name.
Yeah.
I mean, you are special. So, how was that?
It was really fun.
I'm stoked. I'm really glad. It's weird and interesting seeing somebody else driving your wheels. I did make some choices in deck building to make it a little more suitable for somebody who's maybe a little inexperienced. Which isn't to say that I dumbed the deck down, because it's still kind of complicated. But this version, as I think I may have told you in briefing, is very, very honed to exactly what Aristocrats wants to do. I
put in a lot of just the same, not the same stuff, but like predators, prey, payoff.
Yep.
To the exclusion of everything else. Like there's no
And-
planeswalkers. There's
Liliana.
yeah, but she's
The
a
flippy.
creature. Flippy Liliana. She's a creature
Yeah.
and a planeswalker. Yeah, I think that you were really on top of the triggers for the deck, which is one of the big issues with Aristocrats. Is just remembering all the stuff that happens when you do something.
Yes.
That's always a fun time. So there was one card we were going to talk about.
There's one card we're going to talk about. I'll talk about a different card first.
Go for it.
Because you gave me Flame Slash
Yeah.
to deal with Kalidas
Yes.
specifically. And so I was mostly focused on like the red spells that do damage and stuff for dealing with that, like removal. And I completely forgot about this land, Caracas.
Yep.
It just ended up in my land pool, and it taps for a white.
It's good. It's a
And-
plains.
The other thing it does is it bounces legendary creatures. And I completely missed that. It's just
Yeah.
got like this big block of text, and I just
It's
did
a
not read
card-
it during the game.
Yeah, it's a card that is banned in Commander for obvious reasons.
I can see.
It's a pretty important card in Highlander. In some decks, they'll actually play it off color as like a colorless land.
How do you do that?
You just put it in.
Okay.
Like-
Oh, yeah, because it's land.
Yeah, you just be
Right.
like mono green and also Caracas
Right.
because legendary creatures are strong and numerous and part of our format. So yeah, it's really good tech on both sides of the board. You can actually use it to save your own legendaries.
Oh, to bounce them from
Yeah, like
targeted? Yes.
if they're just like blow it up or in combat, put them back in your hand. So it's just a really strong effect. Speaking of keeping track of triggers,
Yes.
you made Blasting Station sing.
Blasting Station was so fun.
It's really fun. It's kind of a skill testing one, and I think you did really well with it.
But many of like your little minion generating cards and stuff
Mm-hmm.
pull out like a pair,
Yeah.
which is also fun. Triggering off of each enter the battlefield effect.
Yep. Well, there's lots and lots of stuff in this deck that makes a bunch of homies. There's the kind of theme of the deck. There's a few cards that I wish that you could have seen while we were playing. Specifically, stuff like Tuk Tuk the Explorer.
Yeah.
That guy's fun.
I'm really glad I got to produce kobold tokens because they're hideous.
Yeah, they're really, really ugly. There's they've since printed kobold tokens for some set, but I just use like kobolds of Carekeep.
That's they're named, so
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
yeah.
So, any sort of like difficulties with the deck? Any kind of like things you thought you might have done differently if you had a second run at the? at it?
I pulled Bitter Blossom in each game. I did not always play it because it terrified me.
Reasonable. It does tax your life total, but like
Yeah.
sticking an early Bitter Blossom, especially in this deck, is just like the way to think of it is that you can easily sort of get advantage in your court because you are paying life for these 1/1s. But even if you just attack with them,
Yeah.
you start outpacing your opponent.
And that's exactly it. It's like I got, when I did finally play it, it was like turn 2 against Graham, and it gave me some flyers, and it gave me specifically like some 1/1s that I could like Skull Clamp. And Skull Clamp was also a really fun
Clamp
like,
is pretty dumb.
thing to deal with like the 1/1s and the 0/1s that I was just producing. It's just like more fodder for the mill so that I can actually pull either more lands or creatures.
Yeah, I've been tempted to cut Skull Clamp before, and I'm pretty sure that's just objectively incorrect, as Liam would say. Just like you always want to have this card in this deck. It's just too good. It's too good. So you played against Paul.
Yes.
How was that?
It was good. It was like my first time handling the deck, and he had a lot of time shuffling due to like different fetches or like tutoring kind of thing.
It is a very shuffle-heavy format.
Yeah, and I wasn't really used to handling like the 100-card stack, but thankfully like your sleeves are matte and not too slippy.
I like Dragon Shield matte a lot.
Yeah.
I don't have. They didn't pay me to say that. I just dig them.
Yeah, although Liam did give Paul shuffling tips. So
Yeah?
that was definitely a handy
I
feature to have.
realized that there was actually one of the things, thank you for reminding me, that I figured out straight away was that I'd spent a lot of time explaining the deck and I didn't address the land base at all. Because I think your first game you went like fetch land into basic, and I was like,
I think eventually later I fetch landed it into like a plateau, which was perfect for what I needed at the time.
Yeah, like this is one of those things where it's just like there's little things that we really take for granted, where it's like your first fetch is usually going to go get a Ravnica duel at the end of your opponent's turn.
Right.
So that later, if you have to fetch in a hurry, you can get an original duel and not pay the extra life tax to have it come in.
Oh, because it just
untap.
comes in.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, little details. Although fetching for a basic is not actually wrong all the time. If you're worried about stuff like Blood Moon especially, you want to have a basic in play. Although Serge specifically told me that there was no Blood Moon and to make my mana base as greedy as I felt like. But, well, I didn't meta too hard. This version I threw in a lot of tokens, which in previous builds of this deck, I've actually like eschewed a lot of tokens because there's certain effects that only trigger on like non-token deaths. But I was like, no, let's get all the boys in here.
Yeah, and that was a great counter, partly to like, was it Cletus or one of the other effects that Graham had?
Yeah, I never actually thought about that as, a sort of side answer to Cletus because that, he's pure kryptonite for the deck, except for the tokens, which can still, kind of get there.
And because I was
eventually.
playing Glitter Blossom, I was like guaranteed a fairy on income.
That lifelink's such a pain, though.
Yep, that really hurt.
I think, the next time I re-edit this deck again, I'm going to go even harder into just, like, have an answer for Cletus every time. Because he's just so backbreaking.
But again, I had Caracas. I had other methods. Duress really hurt me a lot on, like, the Flame Slash and Lightning Bolt. Can't really think of anything else. Like, I would definitely play the format again.
That's cool. Like, I really like Highlander, and you can probably see why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the thing is figuring out how to get some decks handy. But yeah, we could maybe make that a thing. What else have we got in here that we haven't talked about? Do you have any cards that you would put into this kind of deck that you didn't see in here? You play a little bit of Magic on the side.
Yeah, I started during like the Mirrodin block, so I know there's a lot of like mirror token interactions and stuff like that. I remember things that involve like cloning pools and stuff like that. That might be fun, but
Maybe.
who knows?
There's lots of little like 2-for-1 mirror
Yeah,
creatures.
that also produce land, I guess, that act as mana or...
You had to play with Orzhov Pontiff, which I'm always happy to see on the table. That guy just,
Oh yes, Haunting. That was fun. That was fun to threaten with.
It's such a weird mechanic. And yeah, this was one that I made a point of explaining because Haunt is weird, and this might be the only playable card with Haunt on it. Did you end up drawing Butcher the Horde? I'm trying to remember.
I don't believe so.
Oh, that's a shame. This one's the homie. This one, I don't feel like I've lost a game that I've drawn him. That's not true, but most games that I draw a Butcher is just like lights out. Just beep beep.
That's how you killed me.
Oh, is
That's how I
it?
killed Paul.
Oh, so you
I was looking at it, I'm like, wait a minute,
There you go.
5/4, optional haste. Hell yes, I did do this.
So you did draw it, and you did.
I did
kill
haste
Paul
it.
with it. Okay, yeah. So there you go.
I don't think it was my only option to kill Paul, though. To be honest.
You always want to have lots of ways to kill Paul.
Yes.
That's troubling. It's very troubling. Yeah, so having seen a little bit of the other decks, did you find anything particularly like interesting, weird, threatening? Would you play those decks?
I don't think I would play the decks that I sell. Maybe Jeremy's deck.
Mono black.
Mono black.
Mono black seemed like a really good contender actually. Like bringing a deck that's like very powerful but also pretty straightforward.
Yep. It was just like, here's heavy hitters. You make zombies. You get lifelink from some vampires.
Get to play Cletus.
Here's what is it? Batterskull, I think. He came out
Batterskull,
with.
very good. Very good.
Yeah.
Difficult to. I feel like your last game you sort of stumbled on mana, didn't you?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, I got completely stopped at 4 mana.
I hate that. That's just the worst feels
Yeah.
for yourself and your opponent because it's like, well, I don't feel like I actually won this. You just, But, variance is part of the game. That's how it go. Cool. Well, if we do this again, then I will definitely try to loan you a heap of a similar configuration to this.
Sweet.
And we have the deck list posted, so if you are curious about putting together your own Aristocrats deck, this version is a lot of fun. There's a couple of different builds for it. I don't know that you could say that there's one that's the best, but you've got options. So check that out in the information below.
And that's it for the interviews. What do you guys think of the event?
It was great.
Yeah, it was super fun. I've never been so anxious watching someone else play Magic without actually being in the game.
It was so tough. I was like, come on, see the line. Oh.
See the line. See the line.
Yeah, I had some regrets about the deck I gave Paul.
You gave him so many choices.
There were a lot of options. He acquitted himself perfectly reasonably, but yeah.
So for those of you who haven't seen it yet, we're going to put a link to the Twitch replay in the description down below, pardon me, as well as all the deck lists, because we get a lot asked for that. So thank you very much for watching that, as well as this recap interview. And, thanks for watching the episode. It's a reminder that this podcast is brought to you by you with your support over at the Patreon at patreon.com/LoadingReadyRun. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time. See you later.